would agree that the trial would commence on the 20th Congress. And having said that, Mr. President, let me just put into the records, Mr. President, our own rules, Mr. President, in the rules of impeachment, Rule 1. The Senate President must actually issue a notice, Mr. President, to the House of Representatives. And that's the reason why he wrote a letter in June 2 and then June 11, Mr. President. If I heard it right, Mr. President, and that's why I wanted to be clarified on this particular issue. If I heard it right, the Minority Leader's motion is for us to stop legislative work and start taking the oath of the Senate President as the presiding officer of the impeachment court and the senator judges. It would also mean, Mr. President, that we assume that the impeachment proceeding, the articles of impeachment had already been referred, Mr. President, because we have not. And so let me just put that on record, Mr. President. And again, I thank the Minority Leader and again share his views about the immediate convening of our impeachment court. And I don't see any reason, Mr. President, why we should convene now than on Wednesday, Mr. President, which is 2 days from now. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Minority Leader.
So, Mr. President, so that we can
The Minority Leader will respond to the
so we can dispose of the pending
clarification
matter.
asked for
Yes.
by Senator Tolentino. Yes.
Yes.
You may proceed, sir.
So that so that the body can properly act on the pending matter which I have raised in my question of privilege based on our rules. I therefore move that we already convene as the impeachment court at this very moment, Mr. President. That's the motion, Mr. President. And we expect the ruling.
If I may, I have already mentioned earlier, Mr. President, and because this representation wouldn't want to raise a point of order. And again, for the record, I share the sentiments of the Minority Leader. We have the same position as to the convening of the impeachment court. We have the same position as to whether or not it will pass through the 19th to 20th Congress. It's the same, Mr. President. But again, I don't want to raise a point of order, Mr. President. But in our rules, Mr. President, you yourself, in Rule 1 of the Rules of Procedure on impeachment trials, let me quote, Mr. President, when the Senate receives articles of impeachment pursuant to Article 11, Section 2 and 3 of the Constitution, the President of the Senate shall inform the House of Representatives that the Senate shall take proper order on the subject of impeachment and shall be ready to receive the prosecutors on such time and date as the Senate may specify. So, Mr. President, I wanted to find out if the motion of the Minority Leader will push through, what would happen, Mr. President, if you have not issued any notice, Mr. President? What would happen to your letters na from June 2 ginawa nating June 11? Does it also mean, Mr. President, na baliwala na po ito? So that is just a procedural question, Mr. President. And again, let me put again on the record that I have the same position as the Minority Leader, that if we can convene as much as possible, Mr. President, the impeachment court, I would go for it, Mr. President. Thank you.
Mr. President, there is
Before
no,
Senator De La Rosa, the Honorable
there is no basis to raise a point of order because no provision or section of our rules has been violated. And that factual question from our colleague that the Senate President shall take proper order on the subject of impeachment has been done. There is a letter from the Senate President to the House dated May 19, 2025.
Which will be on June 11, Your Honor.
Hindi na po ito. Ang ibig sabihin lang po nito, itong ating Rule 1 ng ating Rules on Procedure on Impeachment Trials. Sabihin lang ng Senate President sa House that the Senate has taken proper order of the subject of impeachment and we are ready to receive the prosecutors on such date and time that we will tell you. So yun na po yun. So I think this has been satisfied by the, does the Secretariat confirm the May 19, 2025 communication from the Senate President to the House of Representatives? Tama po ba?
refer na ba yung
The Secretariat confirms a letter dated May 19 setting the convening of the impeachment court supposedly on June 3, which was later on amended at a later date, setting it on June 11. Before recognizing the Honorable De La Rosa, Chair would like to make a record that as stated in the February 24, 2025 letter of the Chair to all the members of the Senate, where we quoted all the relevant Supreme Court decisions and rules and the basis for the action of the Senate President and Chair, namely, citing precedents as well as the practice both in the past by the Senate of the Philippines and by the U.S. Senate na nagsasabi, kailangan mabasa in open session ang articles of impeachment. This is clear from the practice in the United States where we lifted, as the gentleman previously stated, more than a majority of our rules, and this was also done in the impeachment complaint. The only impeachment complaint that actually went through to the end during the impeachment trial of Chief Justice Corona. The impeachment articles were read in plenary before it was referred to the impeachment court. However, it was done by the majority leader at that time. That was the first time it was done, not written in our rules too, but when the Secretariat checked precedents and practice in the United States, it was actually the House prosecutors that did it, or who usually does it in the United States. Hence, the notice given for the June 2nd, June 3rd reading by the House prosecutors of the articles of impeachment. Thereafter, that will now be referred to the impeachment court, which will give rise to the creation of the impeachment court, the oath of this representation, as well as the members of the Senate, and the convening of the court to approve its rules and to set the calendar of the court, both either in this Congress or in the next Congress. For the record, as stated by Senator Villanueva, as I stated, both off the record, meaning in media interviews, that the chair is of the belief that this will cross over to the 20th Congress, very much like the citations given by the Honorable Pimentel. Not only because presidents in the U.S. so state, we have our own presidents too with respect to